What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Nemo Propaganda here. Got another amplifier review for you guys. I'm trying to get into maybe not a whole lot more amplifiers this year, but I'm trying to review more that pique my interest. And Pathos as a brand is one amplifier company that's really got my interest. I reviewed their Classic 1 Mark III tube hybrid a couple months ago. That thing impressed the hell out of me. I had to move up their chain and see what their more expensive offerings brought to the table. This one here's the Inpol Remix Mark II. It's a Class A unit, and don't let that scare you because this is a little bit special for a Class A amp. I'll tell you in a second, but let me get those main specs on screen so you guys can check that out. I'll tell you about some specs and standout features, what makes this amp special or unique, how it sounds, how it pairs up with speakers, and then we'll wrap up the video. So, something that makes this amp unique is their Inpol design. This is like a patented circuitry that Pathos has developed, and essentially in layman's terms, what it promises to do is boost efficiency, give you a little bit more power and things like that. Now, why does that matter? Well, usually Class A amps are pretty big and pretty heavy, and if you notice, this bad boy is not too big, nor is it too heavy, yet it still manages to put out 25 watts a channel at 8 ohms and 38 watts a channel at 4 ohms, which is a lot of Class A power for something so small. That was really impressive. Does it get hot? I mean, yeah, it's a Class A amp. It's going to get hot. No surprise there, but most of the time, a Class A amp this size has like half the power. So they're kicking butt there, and their Inpol technology is definitely getting the job done. This amp is available in a few configurations. You can get a lacquered finish instead of this matte black here. That does raise the price. The base price is $58.95. There is a DAC add-on for a fairly reasonable price, in my opinion. $759 gets you the DAC upgrade, and I'll say I think it's totally worth it with the DAC upgrade. I do not think you will find a better sounding DAC for that price or less. Like, you're not going to be able to save money by going external in this situation. I understand a lot of times, especially in the higher end amps, sometimes the DAC upgrades are like well north of $1,000, even $2,000. Not here. Pathos is not being greedy with the DAC upgrade. The DAC edition, like I said, it only adds $759. So if you need a DAC, might as well go with the internal one. I thought it sounded fantastic. Some other standout features are going to be just Pathos as a brand, what they bring to the table. These guys make almost everything in-house, whether it's the casework, any soldering, if there's any wood accents on their amplifiers, they're processing that wood in-house in Italy. I love to see stuff like that. It's like a family-owned operation. They take QC very seriously, build quality very seriously. They're very passionate about what they do. You could see it in the product and you can hear it in the product. So with that out of the way, what does it sound like? And is 25 watts or 38 watts a channel at 4 ohms enough power? First, let me answer that question. Yeah, it's a lot of power, actually. I watched a video by Thomas in Stereo many years ago where he said that Class A watts were not the same as Class AB watts. I don't think he meant it literally, but what he was saying essentially is Class A watts seem to be more powerful for one reason or another, and I concur with that statement 100%. This amplifier with 8 ohm speakers connected to it, if you came to my home and you heard this amplifier, you would assume it's got at least an honest 50 watts RMS. It was able to play every speaker I had without any issues, including some hard to drive options like the CSS1TD. Now, with the wattage out of the way, let me tell you what the thing sounds like. I'll be honest, I'm going to keep this simple. This is the best amplifier I've had in for review, even besting my Kinky Studio preamp and monoblock separates that are roughly the same price. The treble region is ever so slightly smooth, very easy on the ears, yet still very resolute. We've got a high level of refinement. This thing is easy to listen to, yet it's still bringing good sparkle, good air, great separation. And I hate to use this word because I've heard other reviewers use it and I never understood. It always sounded like they were just trying to sound fancy when they would say the amp sounded sweet. But now that I've heard this Pathos, I understand what they mean. In a nutshell, when I say it sounded sweet, The treble was just really enjoyable. It was really easy on the ears, yet still very resolute and highly refined. And the cool thing about that too is not to the point that, well, let me rephrase that. I guess it's not even a rephrase. I didn't even get out what I was going to say, but it's not too picky with recordings either. Now, don't get me wrong. You feed it better recordings, it's going to sound better, but it didn't rip apart any of my poor recordings either, and I loved that. Moving down to the mid-range, the amplifier is very holographic, very three-dimensional, great sense of depth, air and space around every single note. I paired this amp at one point with a speaker that had a similar mid-range, a mid-range that was also large, expansive, holographic, the Zoo DWX. And that combination, that $1,400 speaker with this amplifier, easily endgame, easily. A lot of people would consider that an endgame setup. I couldn't believe how good it sounded. And that's one of the cool things about a really good amp. A really good amp will have cheaper speakers sounding like they cost 2 or 3 times the price. And that's not hyperbole. I really mean that. The Zoo DWX on this amp would have you believe the Zoo DWX are at least $4,000 or $5,000 speakers. I really mean that. I genuinely mean that. That's not hyperbole. Mid-range, fantastic. Organic, holographic, three-dimensional, staged really nicely, tonally rich, ever so slightly warm, beautiful sound. Moving down to the bass, again, now you might think 25 watts a channel at 8 ohms, 38 watts a channel at 4 ohms. How good could its bass performance be? Really good, really good, no complaints. It was able to drive all my speakers again, including the harder to drive options. It really does seem like what Thomas and Stereo said about Class A power was true. Class A power, it's not the same as Class AB power, certainly not the same as Class D power. It can drive speakers way harder with less. I don't understand the circuitry enough to quantify that to or explain to you why that is, but now that I've experienced it, I know it's true. So, overall, we've got a sound that is, in a nutshell, very pleasurable to listen to, very enjoyable to listen to. There's a sense of passion coming from this amplifier that I enjoy very much. And I know that's a word I don't use very often to describe audio. I did use it when I reviewed the Franco Serblin Accordo bookshelf speaker. Some gear, it just sounds passionate. I don't know how else to say it, you know? So that's what it sounds like, okay? How does it compare to other amps? Actually, let's talk about speaker pairing real quick. I could not find a speaker that didn't sound fantastic on the Pathos Inpol Remix Mark II. Every speaker I had here, whether it was cheap, middle priced, or very expensive, fantastic. Cheap stuff like the Hecko Aurora 300, fantastic. Medium price stuff like the Bucard S400 Mark II, fantastic. Expensive stuff like the Platamon by Mon Acoustics, $6,000 to $8,000 a pair, sounded fantastic. And I already told you the Zoo DWX, which is only $1,400. With this amp, easily endgame combination for a lot of people. I really meant what I said there. A good amplifier truly is the foundation of your system. And I'm very much of the belief that if budget is an issue, you should start with the amplifier. Forget about DAC, forget about speakers, forget about cables. A good amplifier is the foundation of your system, and it will have cheaper speakers sounding like they cost more. I promise you. Let's jump into those comparisons. So let's first compare it to my own set of amplifiers. I have the Kinky Studio EXP7 preamp that is $2,100 or $2,200 paired with their monoblock amps, the EXP7s. Those are $3,700 for the pair, roughly $5,800. So my pre-power setup is within $95 of the Pathos. My Kinky Studio separates have a very high level of refinement. It's one of the reasons I love them. And very, very good low volume performance. The Pathos Impulse Remix Mark II is ever so slightly better in both of those areas. Its refinement is slightly more, and its low volume performance is ever so slightly better. Moving down to the mid-range, the two amplifiers start to be a little bit different here, where the Pathos is holographic, three-dimensional, ever so slightly warm. My Kinky Studio is more on the cool side of things, a little bit more open and expansive. but not more open or expansive than the Pathos. Their expansiveness is roughly equal. Where the Pathos is going to be different is going to be ever so slightly warm. That's a tonal difference. And then I would say it is a little bit more holographic, and that is going to be a performance difference. Moving down to the bass region, I did not hear any major differences between either amplifier's ability to control the woofer on a speaker. Of course, I am not in the largest room, nor am I pushing things to the limit. Push come to shove, if I was in a big room, really cranking the volume, no surprise the Kinky Studio mono blocks having 250 watts of channel at 8 ohms apiece would most likely be able to drive speakers to much louder volumes. One of the things I want to talk about is the volume control of the Pathos real quick before we move on to the next comparison. The Pathos gives you a lot of granularity at the lower side of the volume range. So if you're a low volume listener and you want to really dial it in, you can get extremely granular, figure between like 60 and 75 dB. You have so much control, even below 60 dB. I mean, you can make changes that are so small, you're not even sure the volume changed. It's very granular, guys. So what else can we compare this thing to? Let's compare it to Pathos's own amplifier that I've already reviewed, the Classic One. The Classic One, I want to say, was about $2,000 cheaper. The Classic One is a tube hybrid. It's got quite a bit more power. I want to say that one was 70 watts, Class AB, 8 ohms, 135 or 130, Class AB at 4 ohms. So as far as output capability, ability to play loud, the more affordable Classic One Mark III tube hybrid can actually play a little bit louder. Obviously, it's got more than double the power. But let's start with the treble region. Both amplifiers are very refined sounding. They have really good separation in the treble region. They're ever so slightly smooth, not to the point that it's going to take away any detail, micro detail, anything like that. You're still getting a ton of resolution, but it's a really sweet delivery that's easy on the ears. The Inpol Remix right here is going to be ever so slightly more refined. Moving down in the mid-range, both holographic, both expansive, both ever so slightly warm. The Inpol Remix, a little bit more holographic, a little bit more expansive. Moving down to the bass region, again, I did not feel that the Class A Inpol Remix had any issue controlling the woofers of any speaker. However, my room is smaller, and I'm fairly confident in a larger room, push come to shove, the a little bit cheaper Classic One Mark III, having more than double the power, should be able to control the woofers on most speakers at the absolute limit, right? There's no surprise there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can compare it to here that makes sense or that you guys might want to know about. Let's compare it to the Thomson Stereo's Galleon. That's $4,500, so it's about $1,200-$1,300 cheaper, so that there's a little bit of a price disparity there, but I think you guys would be curious about that comparison. So the two amps are pretty different tonally. The Thomson Stereo Galleon Special Edition is going to be fairly sharp in the treble region. Both amps have a lot of resolution and a good refinement. Thomas's amp is going to be sharp with its attack in the treble region. The Pathos ever so slightly smooth. Pathos also takes a little bit of an edge in terms of overall refinement in the treble region, costing more money. That's no surprise. I'm not knocking Thomas. I love his amplifier. I think it's fantastic. But the Pathos Inpol Remix 2 costs more for a reason. It really does deliver. Moving down to the mid-range, the amps really start to have a departure from each other. Thomas's amp is going to be more colorful, warmer, more tonally rich. In that mid-range, Thomas is aiming to have that be a colorful sound. The Pathos is also warm and tonally rich in the mid-range, just not as much as the Galleon TS120 Special Edition. The Pathos and Galleon TS120 Special Edition are both very holographic. The Pathos is a tube hybrid. The Galleon TS120 SE is a full tube amplifier, but they had about equal amounts of holographics, three-dimensionality, depth, staging, and all of those things. The biggest difference in the mid-range is going to be the tonal character, with the Galleon Special Edition just being warmer overall. Moving down to the bass, the Galleon TS120 SE is a bass boosted amplifier. It does kick up the bass just a little bit. To my ears, it sounds like around 35, 40 hertz. So it's going to sound thicker, juicier, fuller. The Pathos Inpol Remix Mark II is going to be more linear. It's not artificially boosting any frequencies. And it's going to control your woofers just fine. The Galleon, having a little bit more power available, might be able to drive speakers a little bit louder, or at the absolute limit, control the woofers a little bit better. Not something I noticed in my room. In my room, the Pathos Inpol Remix Mark II, it's a bit of a mouthful, guys. I'm sorry if I'm mumbling that a little bit. Had no issue with any speaker. Every speaker I connected to this amplifier sounded beautiful. So, at $5,895, do I think it's worth it? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Do I think it's worth it to spend another $759 and go for its internal DAC? Yes. If you need digital, yes, I definitely think it's worth it. I do not think you'll find a better DAC for the money or less. You're not going to be able to save money going external here. I think that wraps up just about everything I wanted to say, guys. If you got any questions about this amp, feel free to ask in the comments. If your question is a little bit more complicated, please ask in my free Discord. A link is in the description. Overall, Pathos is getting 2 giant thumbs up from me. I want to review more Pathos, but I have a feeling you guys are going to get annoyed if I keep reviewing the same brand. So I'll probably mix it up for a while, step away, but I definitely want to come back to Pathos and review some of their other amplifiers in the future. I'll leave you with this. If I was doing a sound system today, I would buy a Pathos amplifier. That's what I would start with. That's how much I like their stuff. It's that simple. Until next time, guys, take care.